Thank you all for coming to Hokyoji Sunday Dharma talk today. And we have Reverend Shuji Valdene Mintzmyer, who's going to be our guest speaker today. So it's my pleasure to introduce her. She's a ordained Dharma transmitted Soto Zen Buddhist Priest in the Katagiri lineage. She first began her Buddhist practice more than 35 years ago and was ordained in 2011. She's trained at Shasta Abbey in California and Great Vow Monastery in Oregon and Ryumonji Monastery, and also the Shogaku Priest Ongoing Training program in Fresno, California. Especially meaningful for Shuji is her part in interfaith and community outreach programs, including those in Omaha, Des Moines, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Shuji holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Fine Arts and Economics with a minor in Asian Studies, and has a master's in business with a focus on organizational behavior and statistical methods, both from the University of Nebraska. She's a Master Tailor and one of only a few Buddhist priests to create traditional Soto Zen Buddhist Priest garments. She's been an entrepreneur most of her professional career. Presently, she's the sole proprietor of the Zen Monk Wear, a business providing monastic priest garments to international clergy and lay practitioners. Currently, Shuji is the head teacher living in Manhattan, Kansas, and she's currently working to set up a physical, not a Zoom, space for some internet. So it's my pleasure now to introduce Shuji, and I'll try to go to the speaker view again. And thank you so much for joining us, Shuji, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say to us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Boy, listen to that. I think I need to cut that bio down in half. That's way too much about me. Shuji, monk. That's kind of all I need to really say. I think I wrote that for a professional thing I was doing. And not that this is not professional, but wow, nobody needed to know that I love statistics. But anyway, thank you all for being here, and thank you for inviting me to come speak with you today. It is a beautiful morning. I'm looking out my window. Here in Kansas, it's been way too hot, and we've finally been able to open the windows at night, and it's nice to have a little touch of autumn. We're in extreme heat and drought, so if it rains, nobody will complain today. Even if they had their family picnic planned, they'll say, we're going to stop it for rain. This is close to the time of year when a lot of Buddhist temples have their festival for Avalokitesvara. Today may be a little late. The first time I went to Avalokitesvara was the first time I went to Shasta Abbey. And very memorable. And I'm also in a series of talks for the Des Moines Zen Center on the Lotus Sutra. This is the translation I'm using. Gene Reeves. I don't know if it's my favorite translation, but he has a companion to this, Stories of the Lotus Sutra. And I was in a Buddhist book group, and I said, let's do the Lotus Sutra. And everybody kind of, because the Lotus Sutra is a little long sometimes. And the leader of the group said, let's look at the stories of the Lotus Sutra. And me, being the Zen monk I am, said, I'm not going to read the stories of Lotus Sutra. I want the real thing. But because I was part of this group, I got the book, and I loved the stories of the Lotus Sutra by Gene Reeves. So I also got his translation companion piece. And it's been 6 years, and I'm still going back to the stories of the Lotus Sutra. So every time I pick it up, I thought, good time to drop what I think I like and be open to new experiences, because it's given me a whole new look on the Lotus Sutra. When I first told my teacher Nonan I wanted to be a priest, he gave me the Lotus Sutra and said, read this. So I read it, and I went to him and said, I don't understand. What is the Lotus Sutra? So he gave me 3 translations and the commentary and said, read them all together, read it again. His idea of teaching was read it until you understand it. And that's been many years, and I'm still reading it, and I'm still not sure if I understand exactly what is the Lotus Sutra. But it's a delightful sutra full of fantasies and miracles, and page after page of millions of bodhisattvas attaining enlightenment and billions of beings coming in and out and bowing to the Buddha. But it also has some really deep teachings in amongst all this magic of no self. And one of the things the Buddha says over and over again is, you are Buddha. Maybe not now, but definitely in the future. We are all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And I think that's a lesson that we can hear every day. Good reminder for me when I'm not acting like a Buddha. It's like, yeah, the Lotus Sutra said I was a Bodhisattva. I'm not one now, so maybe I should change some of my behaviors I'm doing right now. But another thing about the Lotus Sutra is everything's said twice, once in prose and once in verse. And part of that is to make it much easier to remember, because as it says many times in the Lotus Sutra, anyone who memorizes the Lotus Sutra will reach certain enlightenment. And anyone who writes it down will reach certain enlightenment. And that's why you'll see people just copying the Lotus Sutra by hand, because that's what it says over and over again, to memorize it. I have never written it out by hand, nor will I ever memorize it. My brain doesn't do that anymore, but I read it and I enjoy it. Chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra is called the Universal Gateway of the Bodhisattva, Regarder of the Cries of the World. This is one of my early Lotus Sutra chapters I was exposed to. And I'll say it's kind of fun. I'm going to read a short segment of it. Listen to the practices of Avalokitesvara, which have their application to all. If you hear his name and see his body and contemplate him in thought, your life will not be in vain. That just makes my heart happy. All I have to do to make my life not be in vain is to follow the practice of Avalokitesvara. That's a relief until you think about it. And you will extinguish all suffering. And if robbers around you, each with a sword with their intent to harm, if you contemplate the power of Avalokitesvara, the thought of mercy will awaken in them. Poisonous dragons and demons, if you contemplate the power of Avalokitesvara, they will dare not hurt you. If you are surrounded by evil animals whose teeth and claws are fearfully sharp, and you contemplate the power of Avalokitesvara, they will turn away swiftly at the sound of your voice. This is part of the magical thinking of the Lotus Sutra. And I'm not sure if it's magic or not, but it sounds magic when you put it this way. Somebody comes after you with the knife, you call in the name of Avalokitesvara and their knife will turn to butterflies. Another place, the robbers push you over a cliff and you immediately sprout wings and fly. There's something real powerful about this. And it's not just magical thinking. This goes on for 10 pages in my translation about what the powers of thinking and calling upon the name of Avalokitesvara will do for your life. Many life and death situations that just calling upon her name shall come to you. Avalokitesvara is a very interesting bodhisattva. Most people have her, him, they on their ancestral altar or somewhere in their temples or somewhere in their homes. I also have one on my dashboard of my car to remind me not to drive like a jerk. There's not necessarily a historical person called Avalokitesvara. We don't know. It seems like this ideal. India, Avalokitesvara is usually a male. In China, Guanyin, male, female, both. In Japanese, my tradition, she's almost always a female, but sometimes very gender neutral. I'll refer to Avalokitesvara as her this morning. But whatever she's called, her name means hearer of the cries of the world. She's a perfect ideal of perfect compassion. Sometimes when I hear her true name, hear the cries of the world, I think, oh, all I can possibly do is cry along with her. So in Shasta Abbey, when you go to their festival, they have over 100 images of her put around the Buddha hall, hanging, and we walk around and contemplate each image of her. Some she's standing, some she's sitting. A lot of them have water. And one of my favorite ones was she's standing on a small rock with huge waves around her. And it's like, yes, that is what I want my vision of me as Avalokitesvara to be. Just standing there. Here's my Avalokitesvara. Fairly typical, fairly, you can find images like this all over the place. And the one thing she's often is standing on a dragon. I could talk about Avalokitesvara for 2 or 3 hours, so I'm going to give a very short thing. She stands on a dragon, and that is the dragons of your desires. I'm sure there's other interpretations. On mine has fallen off enough that my dragon has lost his teeth. I thought, that's good. She has to stand on my toothless dragon. And she almost always carries a thing of a vase, and she's pouring it out. This one, it's empty. She's dumped it all out. And one of the explanations of that I like is she pours cooling liquid on your flames of anger. She's empty. She needs to get hers refilled because she has poured a lot of cooling liquid on my flames of anger. And the most important thing for me is she's carrying a lotus flower. And it's not so much that it's pretty. Yeah, it's pretty. But it's a reminder to stop and take care of yourself. The old saying, stop and smell the roses. She said, yeah, you need to stop and ponder the lotus flower. And when I see that, I think of in Wizard of Oz, after the monkeys get through with a scarecrow, he's lying on the ground. He says, my legs are over there, my arms are over there, my chest is over there, but we got to go save Dorothy. And the Tin Man comes up and says, "Ma, we have to put you together first." That's what the rose is, the lotus is for me, a reminder that I'm not going to save anyone until I put my legs and arms and chest back together, because I'm just a talking head flopping around without that lotus. It's like, we have to be together. We have to be together before we get get out there. And if you've ever tried to pick a lotus flower or a lily pad, those stems are tough. They grow in muddy water, tough stem. And I picked one once and I put it in my suitcase. And I got home and it was a mess and made my whole suitcase a mess. So it's like, you kind of have to leave them where they're planted. Leave yourself where you're planted and make beauty and self-care wherever you are. Another popular depiction of Avalokitesvara is one with many arms. And with that, mine has 2 arms, but she has everything you need. Many arms. You need a hatchet? Here's a hatchet. Need a needle and thread? Here's a needle. Here's a thread. Modern ones from China, they all have cell phones, because the current day Avalokitesvara needs that cell phone. So when the thieves are there about to push you over the cliff, you can give somebody a call and say, "Pick me up at the bottom because I'm going over." There's Avalokitesvara saying, "Here's a phone, make your quick call." So one of my things I talk about often is, how does calling upon her name, which makes everything okay, how does that fit into our lives today? I mean, if I can't take the energy of hearing the cries of the world out there to the world with 1,000 arms offering something to everyone that needs it, if I can't take that into my day-to-day life, what does it matter? I can call upon her when I'm safely at home all I want, but how does that affect me as I go grocery shopping, as I go to my knitting group? Every day I chant the 4 Bodhisattva vows. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. We go on with her. What am I freeing beings from? I'm freeing them from suffering. And the definition of a good delusion is, I don't see it. And every single thing is a Dharma gate. When I try to pick up something, lettuce from the grocery store, and I find that it's gotten expensive this summer, that's another Dharma gate. And how do I find Buddha's way as I walk through my day-to-day life? I vow to realize it. That's a hard vow. All 4 of these are really hard vows. And I could not do it without calling upon the name of Avalokitesvara. Back to the sutra. I know there's not real beings flying around that's going to catch me when the thieves push me off the cliff. And I know if somebody holds me with a knife, if I call upon the name of Avalokitesvara, the knife won't instantly turn to dust. But if I'm in that situation and look at it with total compassion, how would that change the situation? If thieves break into my home and I'm like that wonderful monk and I forget his name right off the top of my head, I wish I could give you the moonlight. I have nothing else to give. What I have is yours. How would that change the world? You know, if I'm pushed off a cliff and see that strawberry and decide to pick it on the way down, how does that change the world? Fulfilling my vow, bodhisattva vows, the best case I have is when I drive. I used to joke that as soon as I started practicing Zen, there are a lot fewer jerks on the road. It's like, yeah, the main jerk that was on the road was me, and how all the other drivers just got nicer. And I'm not sure when it happened, but somehow it just happened organically when somebody would pass me and cut in instead of going, rah, 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 rah. I started gashoing and saying, may you get to where you're going in peace and safety. And I don't know when I started that, just all of a sudden I realized, oh, there's been a change there. And I see it how I react with people. And I see it how I react with myself. And that's Avalokitesvara in your life. And I wrote a bunch of stuff that I'm not going to talk about because I just don't want to. But I'm going to talk about Avalokitesvara and how it's in our life and how important it is to call upon her name. You know, say you made a nice meal and your family doesn't want to eat it. It's so simple. You know, I made you a nice casserole here. You know, wonderful zucchini, eggplant, onions from the garden that I have tended all summer. Now I picked them and brought them here. And everybody's too busy or I don't want to eat because I'm not hungry. You can look at that many ways. It's like, well, I'm going to sit down and eat my nice meal. Or you can get really angry. So, look what I did for you. Avalokitesvara in your life will just help you take a breath and step back. I was talking about this with a Dharma friend of mine once, and he said, Avalokitesvara eats grief. I said, oh, it's like, I don't understand that. I'm still thinking about that. It's probably been 5 or 6 years. Because something about that statement stuck with me. And does that mean I gain nourishment from grief, taking on their grief? I thought, boy, you have to be careful about that. But I think there's a transformation. I put seeds in the ground. I grow zucchini. I pick them. I chop them, add other ingredients, put it in the oven, and I have a beautiful meal. I eat the zucchini. I get strength from it, and it passes on through. And what I don't eat goes to compost. It's all used. Whew. What if I can take other people's anger and somehow transfer it into positive energy? What if I can take my anger and transfer it into positive energy? Whew. Is that what they're talking about when I call upon Avalokitesvara and the poisonous snakes listen to me when I say, look, it's just a waste of venom. I'll back up. You don't need to bite me. When I say, okay, and back up. What does it mean when a scorpion can't bite me? Because I call upon the name of Avalokitesvara. You know, the scorpion's just trying to protect their home. The snake is just trying to not get stepped on. The thief just wants a new iPad. Here, take mine. I don't need it. Look at it with compassion, with complete compassion. Wow, is that how you turn that knife into butterflies or whatever? There's a lot of things where bad things disappear. And my favorite is something turns into butterflies. And I thought, yep, that's the 4-year-old in me wanting everything to be butterflies and flowers. There's so much big suffering going on right now. Compassion fatigue, there's a name for it. Oh, Jesus, aren't you tired? There's fires, there's earthquakes, there's floods, there's drought. So many people are in pain. There's so much hate around. Whew. It's putting a lot of work on one bodhisattva. But the story about somebody who chopped up Avalokitesvara into 1,000 pieces, poof, 1,000 little bodhisattvas popped up. Yeah, we say that vow. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. That's a big task to take on. But we're not alone. We're together with our earthly Sangha. We're together with all the Sangha members we don't know. We're together with all the other religions, groups, everybody. There's so many people in this world right now calling on Avalokitesvara, no matter what her name is, no matter what his name is. My mom called on Jesus. It worked for her. It gave her peace. It helped her manifest Avalokitesvara in her life. She did a few things, but she did them consistently and always. So we call upon the name of Avalokitesvara. Our chanting will not cause a sweet, gentle rain to fall upon the fires, but it's not going to hurt. We can go out there and help one person one way. That's how we spread. That's how Avalokitesvara gets another arm, you know? I help you and you say, oh yeah, that's nice. Another arm is sprouted. Another bodhisattva sprouted. And she spreads. So, how do we hear the cries of the world? Do we support legislation? Do we get political? It can't hurt. Do we open our homes to somebody in need? Can't hurt if we have the chance. Or do we just let our family blow off a little steam by not eating your zucchini casserole as they leave the room muttering, I can't eat another zucchini this season. Just let's go out to eat because mom made another zucchini casserole. We do what we can. We walk through this world contemplating Avalokitesvara when we see suffering. And when we see the suffering, we don't even know that we see. That changes the world. I'm going to read one last piece from the Lotus Sutra. If thunder resounds, lightning flashes, hail falls, and a great rain pours out of the cloud, if you contemplate the power of Avalokitesvara, they will disappear immediately. If sentient beings are in great adversity and immeasurable pain affects them, the wonderful power of the wisdom of Avalokitesvara can relieve the suffering of the world. And the suffering of birth, old age, illness, and death will gradually be distinguished. And the last words of the Lotus Sutra is, when Buddha taught this chapter, complete enlightenment awoke in 84,000 sentient beings at the assembly. Yeah, read this chapter. You become an awakened bodhisattva, and you go out there and change the world. One kind action after another. Any questions, comments? I realize that was very skim the top of Avalokitesvara. I'm sure you could every one of you could say more on Avalokitesvara than I just said. But I just wanted to remind us that they're great in our lives. Welcome her, him, they.
This is Kyoku, and thank you for making my new Kuromo, so I didn't have to be a raggedy Avalokitesvara. But as soon as you started, I was feeling very enthusiastic because I also really love the Lotus Sutra in some ways for no good reason at all. It's just kind of outrageous. And when I got to co-teach it at Clouds and Water, one of the things that's in the version that I also have, which is the same one you talked about, is sort of chants and acclamations by all kinds of creatures. And it's like mostly the Lotus Sutra texts and translations don't have that section. And so one of the things we did in class was we asked Myoho Habermas to help us somehow give voice to those chants. And at one point she said, you mean like actually chant what's on the page? Because these are syllables, or, just who knows what the tune is or whether you're saying them right or not. And it was just a blast. It was kind of stepping into the energy of the Lotus Sutra, which is not necessarily sensible. So it's lovely remembering, like you do, the stories of the Lotus Sutra and really stepping into it. One of our listeners in the class was a runner, and he started running using the chants of, I forget what they were. They were not physically beautiful creatures. They were, sort of, they had kind of a fierce energy to them. And he gave us each bookmarks at the end of the class with things that he remembered from the Lotus Sutra. So that's kind of a wonderful example of how it inspires activity that you wouldn't necessarily expect from just taking a class. And I guess the other thing I just wanted to share, because it really, I appreciate you talking about Avalokiteshvara. And when I first heard that the name of Avalokiteshvara meant hearer of the cries of the world, it just knocked my socks off, because I thought, who could imagine? I couldn't introduce the whole idea that somebody would devote their entire life, which who knows how long it is, to simply hearing the cries of the world, just hearing them. And it really moves my heart when I see that image and I think about that name, because who doesn't want to be heard? I mean, that is something that is so like beautiful nutrition and nourishment for just about anybody. And it really gave me a different idea about what the enactment of compassion is and can be. So thank you for coming and being yourself and Avalokiteshvara with us today.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Shoot.
Shu,
I'm sorry.
Shuji, like a shoe and like a Jeep without the P.
Thank you for your Dharma talk. I have a question about compassion, which I will admit I struggle with the word sometimes. Because in my head, I struggle with kindness in the sense of a kind action being letting go of something, maybe a hurtful comment, and maybe not, towards me, but maybe something's happening in a group and somebody says something hurtful and a kind action is, well, okay, transforming that energy into maybe letting that comment go, or kind of, just pausing, holding it. Are there other ways does that mean not to comment on possibly the hurtful comment coming from someone else? In other ways to address it, and how to address things in a compassionate way.
In the 80s, I took a class, something like 10 steps for a better life or something. It was one of those 80s things. And I don't remember any of the steps except the first step was kindness. And the only thing I remember that she said that whole hour was, being kind is not necessarily being nice. And if you're in a group and somebody's saying very hurtful things, yeah, it's kind of nice it's very nice not to make a scene and say, wow, that really hurt some people in this group, but it's not necessarily kind. And I always use the example of when my son was 2 or 3, he'd get out of the car in parking lots and go and run And kindness is to grab him and say, Ben, stop. And maybe it was, and grab him by the arm, even a little jerkily, because he's going to get hit by a car. And for Zen students, I like the example of the old monk that said, I don't have any more good students because I can't hit them with my slippers anymore. Is it kind to hit your students with slippers? I've never hit any of my students with my slippers, but the idea that kindness is not always nice. And the abbot of Shasta Abbey always said, Buddhism is a religion for adults. It doesn't give you easy answers. And I like that a lot because it's not, in my opinion, it's not cut and dry of what compassion, what kindness is. You have to use your brain. If you're in a group and somebody starts blathering and saying hurtful things, it may not be a safe space for you to stand up and say, oh, you're totally wrong. I think you're mean, or, whatever. You have to use your brain on all that. Maybe it's better to take them off to the side. We'll call in this person. I shouldn't call him a him. We'll calling this person out in the group just make it worse. Anybody else can comment on that if they wish. That's all I have to say about how hard it is to be compassionate and know what compassion is and know what kindness is.
My introduction to Avalokiteshvara was I got married in 1971 in September, and at McAllister, and in the Fine Arts building, there was a garden in the center. And in that garden, there were two statues, identical statues, beautiful white statues, about 5 feet high. And they were, the label said, Buddhist Goddess of Mercy. And I was just beginning to get into Buddhism, but I didn't think that Buddhists had goddesses. So I was kind of taken aback. But I will say that on that occasion, there was a lot of reason to have the Buddhist Goddess of Mercy involved in the situation. And I have to say that my relationship with the Buddhist Goddess of Mercy has sustained over the years, when that relationship kind of fell apart rather quickly. So then, years later, my wife died, 7 years ago, and I was cleaning out her purse because she kept the checkbook and I needed to write checks for all kinds of things. And in there, I found a tiny little statue of Avalokiteshvara. So that's up on the altar now. And every morning, because I wanted to have some kind of service, I do the invocation of Kanzeon. So, and I think it has changed my life significantly to bring that into my life every morning. To change, as you say, with driving with people. Well, I hope that works out when people cut you off, and bringing the kindness into through the grief into the rest of the world. So I just want to. I don't know what happened to those statues. I know that garden is gone. And I hope that the college kept statue somewhere, but Buddhist goddess of mercy. It seems odd that they weren't ready in the Western world to push any further than to say it was a goddess. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks for your talk.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. Anything else?
Hi, Shuji. Excuse me. Thank you for the talk. Mildly funny story. The first time I practiced with my teacher on a Thursday, I was feeling pretty good about myself, knowing chants, and his wife handed me a chant book. Was like, "You're going to need this." And so we started in on chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra. You can call on Avalokiteshvara. And I was like, first of all, what am I chanting? And second of all, I'm really glad I have the sutra book. So there was that. I think that, yeah, it's fantastical and it's whimsical, but the alchemists would call it transmutation. It's taking the poop and turning it into gold, and leaning into suffering can turn into something quite beautiful. I appreciate the idea that you brought up that we can just be arms of Avalokiteshvara. That we don't. It feels overwhelming to frame it in terms of hearing all of the cries of the world. Oh, that can, at least in my mind, create some stagnation of being overwhelmed. But if we just consider each action as maybe just becoming an arm, and the arms sprout through the action, and other people can be those arms. I think there's a lot of utility in that message. So thank you for your talk, and yeah, thanks.
I went to a temple in Oklahoma City once when my son lived there, and their whole service, their whole basis of their Sangha was they get together every Sunday morning and chant the 25th chapter of Lotus Sutra. I thought, interesting practice. Only Buddhist temple in Oklahoma City at the time, and they had a fairly large group, and I thought, not my practice, but what a good practice to send out in the world. And whenever I went to Oklahoma City to visit my son, I'd go hang out there for Sunday morning.
It's me again, Kyoku. Like all of us, I think, I wrestle with the idea of kindness and compassion and how the world is. What's acceptance, what's right action, that kind of thing. And I think probably the most challenging part is things are as they are in each moment. And it's what I've been trying to develop a more, I guess, robust response to is appreciating things as they are, because I have this idea, particularly it seems like now, like, wow, there's just so much I want to eliminate from the activity of the world as it operates. And that I was touched by your question, Mary, about so what is compassion? And I'm beginning to get a little more appreciation for the first noble truth, where the Buddha basically says, your job is to get to the bottom of what suffering is. And you need to know what happiness, compassion, sadness, grief, you need to really know that through and through and penetrate the truth all the way to the bottom. And that just oftentimes feels like it goes against a lot of how I think the world should be. So I'm trying to appreciate that probably that penetration, and I see it sometimes and I don't at others, that the penetration of that truth of attraction, aversion, equanimity, all of the things that arise in the world is first and foremost not trying to push them away, not trying to have an idea of what should happen, but really just sticking with things as I go through them. So that's all.
I'm not sure how you close.
I can handle that. However, I wanted to say, Shuji, thank you for your talk. In recent times, I've run into a couple of very challenging situations with a couple of people. And they just happen to be long time Buddhist practitioners. and it's I'm realizing that part of the difficulty that I'm challenged with is kind of I guess you could call it compassion, for just who they are and what their life has been. Of course, I always think I'm the one who's right, but and I really shouldn't be having to suffer through this right now. But I realize I'm bringing usually sooner or later I realize this, just by myself, that I'm bringing my own crap and stuff into the relationship. Or it could be some of it's just fear. Just like, man, I just don't want to get into like some kind of difficult confrontation with the person. And with these two people, it wouldn't be like hostile, because they have a very strong Buddhist practice. Still, I just don't want to do it. It's just like, man, this can't life be just a little more easy? So, but in any event, I appreciate your talk today. It just further clarified for me that, yeah, I'm bringing a lot of my own stuff into this kind of these challenging situations that, and for me, it seems like I don't have anything to do with it, but I do. So thank you for your talk. I appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening so attentively at my blatherings. about two of the things I love, I think most all to talk about is Lotus Sutra and Avalokitesvara.
Thank you so much, Shuji. It's you certainly have a different voice, than some of the rest of us who give talks regularly at the Hokyoji. So it's really, I really appreciate just hearing the different things coming in from a different place, and it opens us up, I believe, to understanding things more deeply. So thank you so much. We do have 4 minutes left, so this is last call for last question. Okay, time's up. Okay, I'm going to close it out here. And the way we end, Shuji, is we first make an announcement about what kind of events are coming up at Hokyoji, and then we will close with the 4 vows. In any event, we do have several retreats coming up. There's quite a few, so I don't think I'm going to give you all the dates and stuff. But an MZMC retreat starts next week. Yeah. No, the week, not this next week, but the week after. A healing retreat we have going on. The MZMC retreat, if you're interested in that, you would need to register through their Zen Center. The rest of them are from Hokyoji. A healing retreat, a just sitting retreat in October. A Wim Hof retreat, that's more about using your breath to calm down under very stressful situations. A lot of these people are first responders. I think that's what it is. And finally, I'll mention 2 new retreats, one led by Rice A. Mark Anderson, calling Naturally Awake, and then also GD, Gentle Dragon, or On Ru, Laura Kennedy, is also giving a retreat in November also. And I think there's a name for it, but I can't remember right now. Kyoku or Alex, Dozen, do you happen to know it? Okay. Well, anyway, I think there's a name for it, but I can't recall it right now.
Yeah, I think I saw it recently. I think it's practicing the way in this very moment. It's also
this very moment. Something about this very moment. That's right. Now I remember. And then finally, in December, we have the Hokyoji Rohatsu from December 1st to the 8th. And Myo-on, Habermas Share, and Kyoku Whalen, Hokyoji resident, are co-leading that retreat. So that's about it for that. As always, we depend on your financial support. So if you're inclined to offer a donation, you can do so on our webpage. And finally, let's close with the 4 vows. Okay. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. And now I'm going to try ringing a bell. And you're going to tell me if you hear anything or not. Did you hear anything? No. That's good information for me. Okay. So ding. That I did ring a bell. Okay. Okay, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you again, Shuji. And we look forward to hearing from you again sometime. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody. And see you another time soon, I hope. Bye-bye.